Our subject matter is, what is the idea of the Holy Ark? That's our question. We're going to have different answers and different categories of answers. And the coup de grace, I guess the right word is, right? The culmination of it all is a fascinating commentary from the Rebbe in the sicha, which adds noch a kvetch to the Aron, if you will. It's the Chassidus, which is the transcendent of the Kabbala, which is item 10 on the list. Let me just say that the answers that we're going to have are going to go into three categories, besides the Rebbe's. Musa type answers, ethical type answers, common sense, human type answers, philosophy, and Kabbala. So, even though you got all of these issues here, those different forms, essentially, it's three types of insights into the Aron. Simple balabatish a nice, simple commentary on the Aron, and then more philosophical, and then mystical. And of course, I'm going to do my regular discourse on philosophy and mysticism. That's what I market. That's what I sell. That's my profession. But we're not going to go in the order that the pages are printed. We're going to start by flipping 2 pages with the Rabbenu Bechaye on page Reish Samach Tes. And remember, the question is, what's the idea of the Holy Ark? V'al derech hapshat, left side of the page, page Reish Samach Tes. What is the idea of the Holy Ark in Pshat? Says Rabbi Bechaye, push it. The Holy Ark was a box to hide within it the tablets of the covenant. Since Torah and the tablets of the covenant are the first thing, therefore, the description of the making of the Holy Ark precedes the making of the vessels. And it adds one very nice balabatish word. What is the root of the word aroin? Aroin. A chest, an ark. He translates Umash and Nikra Aron is Meloshin Oira. Aron, the root of the word Oira, Aron is Oir, light. The idea of the Holy Ark is to bring light into the world. Al Shatera, because the Teda, Shabbatecha, which is inside of it, Nikras Oir is light. You'll see later on in the Ramban and Mitzvah that the commentators observe that the Holy Ark had no practical purpose. The table was for the bread, the candelabra was for the light, the inner altar was for the incense, the outer altar was for the sacrifice. The Holy Ark was for the Holy Ark. And this is the mystery of the Holy Ark. What's it for? What does Eibush need it for? And there are many commentaries. Here he says because it was with the Torah sat and the light radiated from the Aron. Now, the Holy of Holies was inaccessible to most people, to all people, pretty much. Nobody actually go into the Holy Ark and open it up and take out the tablets or take the Sefer Torah, which was either in it or near it, as the Gemara discusses. But it represented the soul of the Jewish nation. Deep, deep, deep in the Jewish soul is the source of the Jewish power, the light of the Torah. This is a simple interpretation of the Rabbenu Bechaye of the Aron.
Just a quick question. When you say Sefer Torah, what are you referring to now?
Sefer Torah means the scroll. But here it doesn't say Sefer Torah. Here it says the luches, the tablets.
So who's Sefer Torah? Moshe's Sefer Torah?
Yeah, the tablets were certainly in the Holy Ark. As far as the Torah is concerned, the Gemara brings 2 opinions and they're tracted by Basra. Whether it was inside or laying next to it on a shelf that was designed specifically for that purpose. But everybody agrees that in the Holy of Holies, in addition to the luches, there was a Torah. And it was the 13th Torah. Moshe Rabbeinu wrote 13 Torahs, 12 he gave to the respective tribes. One he put, this is supposed to be the Torah from which all Torahs are supposed to be edited. It's like the most important Torah. Turn the page. V'yesh lefarash another commentary. And this is also a very practical, nice balabatish commentary on the Aron. It's not mystical, it's not exalted, it's not revelation, revealing. It's just simply practical. There's the Farash Eid, but also Aron as a shitim, that the ark was to be made of wood called shitim. Translates the Rabbenu Bechaye that the ark is Elu HaMesayim. It's those who support and assist those who study Torah. The Torah was inside the ark. The Torah inside the ark is representative of the Talmidei Chachamim, of the scholars. The ark itself, which was made of wood, is to support the people who help support those who study Torah. But the Pasuk says, that the ark itself, which is not representative of the students of Torah, but the Tancheha, the supporters of those who studied Torah, they also were covered with gold. What does that mean to say? Hashem Shach Baruch Hu, the God Almighty, Asid Lasis Tzel, will when Mashiach comes make a shadow, a shade, Lishneim Yachaf, to both together. The Oiskei Torah, those who study Torah, Ulim Esayeh Oisam, and those who assist them. And the connotation, the significance of the gold covering of the wood ark is Hashem embracing not just the Torah, but the box that holds and supports the Torah. So the Holy Ark is representative of people who help Torah be sustained. Okay? 3 lines from the bottom. I skipped a little bit, and there were the poles that carry the ark, which were kept inside those rings. And says Rabbenu Bechaye, this is an allusion to the populace, to the people. They have an obligation to stand up, to erect. To support those who study Torah, as the pillars, as the poles held up the Holy Ark. And it seems to me that there's 2 categories of supports. There's a category of Jews who support the Torah by being the box for the Torah, and there's a category of support of Jewish people who support the Torah by being the arms of the Torah, the poles, the pillars of the Torah. The distinction is that when he speaks about the box itself, he calls them Messiah, assistants. When he speaks about the pillars, he calls them Hahamoy, the population. In other words, there are people who really help Torah studies, they give them a lot of money, and then there are casual supporters of the Torah, they're called the arms. And everybody is meant to support Torah, in one way or another. And then the Rabbenu Bechaye continues on, says to Aron Behem, that the ark and the Torah inside should be carried by these pillars. Translates to Rabbenu Bechaye the famous Gemara. The Gemara says about the Holy Ark that there were a lot of very strange miracles about it. And one of them was Ha'aron Nasas Nesav. There were people designed to carry the Holy Ark, but the Holy Ark would carry them. It only looked like they were holding it, but they would just put the Ark on their shoulders, and the shoulders would sort of magnetically lift them, and they would float. They went across the Jordan this way. So he translates, since one studies Torah, who misnasei b'shvilom, the person who studies Torah is uplifted by those who support him, and he uplifts them as well. The Torah scholar becomes greater by the people who support it, and it seems to me that he's also connoting the idea that he's lifting up those who support the Torah. So this is a second interpretation, that the Holy Ark it's not the Torah itself, it's what holds the Torah. The gold represents the idea that Hashem honors not just those who study the Torah, but those who support it as well, and it's equal. If you learn Torah and you support Torah, it's the same thing. The Rebbe brings always the Zayah. But the Zayah says, Eitz Chayim Hila Machazikim Bo. It's a pillar, it's a tree of life, for those who hold on to it. Those who support it, Mu'usha, will be fortunate, will be blessed. Which indicates that there's 2 categories. People learn the Torah, and there are people who support the Torah. Those who learn the Torah, it's a tree of life. And those who support the Torah, it doesn't say it's a tree of life, but it's Mu'usha, they're going to be fortunate. So the Zayah says, those who support the Torah, don't read Mu'ushar, fortunate, but Meiroshe, at the head. That those who support the Torah are even greater than those who learn the Torah itself. And the gold of the Aron indicates that everybody is embraced by the Eibishter and blessed, not just the Torah, but those who support the Torah as well. That's a second interpretation. Simple, nothing fancy, nothing mystical, nothing simple, Sheinabal about the Shipshat. Now, 2 lines further, and then he brings the Gefen Misayim Tasiyah that you have in all the Maimorim. That the Jewish people are like a vineyard, right? You have the grapes, and you have the leaves, and you have the branches. And the grapes go on their loan to study Torah, and the leaves are the people who support those who study the Torah. And you have no leaves, the grapes will die. The dependency of Talmidei Chachamim on those who support Torah, which is a big union. He goes another pshat, it's a philosophical pshat, but this also is really more al derech hamusar. It's an ethical commentary rather than a realistic explanation of what the Aron was. In other words, it's teaching us a lesson from the Aron as opposed to telling us what the Aron is. that the Aron has three components. Also, Aron, you make an ark, you talk on the Farish Inyan Ha'aron. We can perhaps explain the idea of the Holy Ark. That there's the tablets of the covenant, the deck on top of it, with the two cherubs. This whole composite, the ark, the tablets, the deck, and the two cherubs, indicates three things: Haguf, the body, and then there's the soul, sicha, and the pursuit of the truth, the godly soul, the theoretical soul. I just want to mention an interesting pshat which I just saw. The Sfarim bring that the word kapoides, which means the deck, has the same root as the word kapara. Kapara, to atone. But I think in Ibn Ezra, what's the translation of the word kapara, lachapir? To cover. The word kapara means to cover over. In other words, it's kapara is the same as kapara, but actually kapara is the same as kapara. The idea of kapara is to cover over, to correct, to cover over. So there's a relationship between kapara and the concept of it means a covering and the idea of kapara. And he says like this: Ki ha'aron. I skipped one line. The ark itself was made from the cedar wood, or whatever they call it, acacia wood, which is in the desert. It represents the human body. The four edges, the four rings of the Aron, connected Abba, say this representative of the four elements of which the body is comprised. Okay? I'm skipping to the beginning of the next line, beginning of a line. Ushnei brichim, is the two poles which held it up. The two most central threads, cords within the human body, which are the spine and the primary artery which sits next to it. That's what he writes. One line down, I went down one more line. The two tablets of the covenant are representative of two most critical organs of the human body, which allows us to receive the Teil of the mind and the heart. The two cherubs, remes, are a hint lenefesh, to the spiritual soul, the life of a person. The sicha, and the transcendent soul, the soul that's interested in truth, the godly aspect of the human soul. One is masculine, and the other is feminine. So let's review. The box is the body. The two pillars are the flow of life from the higher parts of the body to the lower parts of the body.
She calls the staves?
Yeah, that held it. The two tablets are the mind and the heart. The two cherubs which are on top are the two souls, the two spiritual dimensions. The soul that animates, the soul of life, which I guess you could say, for lack of distinction, animals have such a soul as well, and the intellectual soul, which the animals do not possess. In other words, the Holy Ark represents an entire composite, an entire construct of a person. And of course, the idea of the Ark is that a person must accentuate the sublime and de-emphasize the mundane and the material. We are a body and an intellectual soul and everything in between. We make up one whole. We must place the emphasis on the higher dimensions of the person as opposed to the lesser dimensions of the person. You'll see later on in the Ralbag, he's going to explain this, I don't know if it's necessarily exactly this same idea, but a similar notion in terms of saying, reach for the stars. Know you have capacity to reach very high. He says the two cherubs, one is masculine, one is feminine. The feminine cherub is this animating soul, the soul of life. The masculine cherub, the kruvim, it's English for kruvim. Cherub is representative of the intellectual soul. The intellectual soul is the abstract reasoner who's pursuing truth. Ralbag says the model of the ordinary was meant to indicate that man has the capacity to reach so close to God as to become a prophet. But it has to do with priorities. Placing the priority on what's above as opposed to placing priority on what's below. So we have so far three very elementary interpretations of the Holy Ark. The first one says it was a house of the Torah, and it's called Aron because the word light. The second one says that it's representative of Torah and those who support the Torah, and how they're equally honored. And the third one says that the Holy Ark is representative of the human being and their possibilities. You can be wood, and you can be gold in pursuing truth. Okay? Now, two more simple interpretations before we jump off the continental shelf. But we're going to go backwards now. We're going now back to the first 3 pages, which are Chumash. Okay, go back to the first page and just turn it once. There he is. Can I help you?
Yeah.
First of all, there's an Eben Ezra. The Eben Ezra is very interesting. The Eben Ezra is the one who said what I said about Kapelis, I believe. Eben Ezra has a lot of interesting ideas about the Aron. The Eben Ezra talks about what's the purpose of the Holy Ark, and he says, the honor of Hashem rested on the cherubs. The Kasuv, and it's written, and Hashem sits on those cherubs. Okay? That's all. That's all. So you know.
Again, what he says, pardon me, he says
that the cover, the honor of Hashem rested on those cherubs. Now, this Eben Ezra is a part of a very technical Eben Ezra. Eben Ezra has a lot of technical analysis. This Eben Ezra is extremely vague. You're going to see us explore this in different angles. The Eben Ezra can be read any way you want. Basically, you could read this Eben Ezra philosophically, you can read this Eben Ezra kabbalistically. You can do whatever you want with this Eben Ezra. But it's typical Eben Ezra. He's so abstract that he tolerates so much. You understand? He's a point of the Shechina, the cover of Hashem rests on the other. What does that mean? I don't know. Don't even try to figure it out. Next. So we have a fourth interpretation. Now Rambam, turn the page. The Ramban is going to say almost the same thing, but I want to show you the Ramban inside, nevertheless. Ramban is concerned with what he construes as a repetition. The Torah seems to be saying the same thing 2 times, and it bothers him, it disturbs him. Why is the Torah being repetitive? It says one thing and then it says it again. It speaks about putting the Eidos, the entity of the covenant, be that the Torah or the Luchas in the Holy Ark, and then a few psukim later it says, after it describes the making of the deck and the cherubs, put the Luchas into the Holy Ark. The Ramban is concerned with the repetition. Why does it repeat it twice? And the Ramban answers the question in typical Jewish fashion with a question of his own. What's the Aron for? What was the point of it? We know what the table was for, we know what the candelabra was for, we know what the inner and outer altars were for, we know what the water base was for. What's the Aron? A box for what? So he answers his question with the point that we're going to share. Now, Avo Pirusha, it's one line below the arrow. Avo Pirusha, the interpretation is as follows. Ki ba'avor, that because sheyitzava bekruv, Galamari instructed about the cherubs, liyesam pesek and fire l'mayla, that their wings should be extended upward. The wings shouldn't be down like a penguin. The wings should be extended upwards. We have no idea why to make them all together. And why to make them in that design? What purpose is it for the base to make the all together? Why should it be in this particular fashion? The Ramban says, the Torah repeats itself because the Torah is not telling us what to do. It's telling us the meaning of the Aron. He told us to put the Eidos into the Aron a few psukim before. The repetition is not about telling you what to do with the Aron, but it's telling you what's the purpose of the Aron. Place the deck with the cherubs. Everything is one together with the Aron. On top of it. Key. Why? What is this unit, this achdus, this conglomerate, this oneness of a ark and a deck and cherubs and arms and so forth? Shakel dover echad, it's all one thing. And Allah Aron Omayla, on top of the Aron you place the Kapelis and the Kruvim. Key, because inside the Aron you're going to put the Eidos, the item, the entity of covenant and witness. I should have a throne to sit on. I'm going to meet you there. I'm going to rest my Shekhinah upon it, and so on and so forth. Enough. Ramban is saying the same thing that Ibn Ezra is being more elaborate. That the purpose of the Aron is to be a unity which holds the Torah. The Torah was viewed as a battery. Remember the Kohen Gadol had a breastplate? Inside the breastplate there was a golden plate that had the name of Hashem. That when you placed it inside, the breastplate had miraculous qualities. It was a battery. The Torah was the battery of the Aron. What made the Aron functional as the seat of Hashem was that inside was the Torah. And it, so to speak, drew the Eibishter into this world. If you remember last year's class, if you don't, I'll try to forgive you, especially if you weren't here. Last year's discussion on this week's Parsha was the whole debate about what was the primary purpose of the Beis HaMikdash. And Rambam holds it was Chabbonis. The Ramban holds that it was for the Shekhinah, for the Torah, for the Shekhinah to rest. This is the same in Ramban. Same opinion. Ramban holds the whole purpose of the Holy Ark was why did you make a table for bread? Why did you make a candelabra for light? Why did you make an altar for incense? Why did you make a Holy Ark for the Shekhinah to rest? But the ability to affect the manifestation of the Shekhinah requires the Achdus, the entire unit of the Aron, with the cherubs and the deck, and the Torah inside, as a mechanism by which the Shekhinah manifested. Okay, we've done 5 different interpretations in about 23 minutes and 34 seconds, which is remarkable. But this is it. The easy is finished. Now life gets interesting. And now I need to give you my introduction. What I did till now was an excuse. Now let's get down to business. What did Rabbi say? There's a lot of discussion in the holy books about creation, about the relationship between the Eibishter and the creation, and how all of these ideas are reflected in Yiddishkeit, and specifically how they're reflected in the Beis HaMikdash. There are essentially 2 schools of thought. The regulars to this class, I suppose by now, are familiar with the 2 schools of thought. The philosophical schools of thought, which is a strictly logical principle trying to explain Torah according to essentially Aristotelian thinking, although, of course, we don't agree with Aristotle, we just use his mechanism, his means. There's such an interesting Ralbag, such an insightful Ralbag. And then there's the mystical perspective, the Kabbalistic perspective. There are differences, there are huge differences in the mystical and the philosophical. But both of them share a common sense of the Torah. Both of them speak of what we would say profanely, evolution, a development. In the Lashon that we're more familiar with, hishtalshalos. Things descend from a higher level to a lower level through a gradualism, through a process, a step-by-step order. Every person understands God doesn't need to do anything. He certainly doesn't need to conform to any rules. But He does. He does. Why is a different discussion. It's been discussed in the past. It will be discussed in the future. It's a classic. But even though there are huge distinctions with the mystics and the philosophers, the difference are about the possibilities of Hishtalshalos. This order, this gradual evolution from a higher level to a lower level in the process of creation, and then in the process of creation's purpose, both speak very, very clearly and repetitively about this concept, this phenomena, this idea. The difference are only in the aspects. What is possible for Hishtalshalos to tolerate? This notion of Hashem creating the world step by step, what does it involve? But it's clear across the board, both the philosophers and the mystics speak about Hishtalshalos in order. What's the difference? What's the difference between the philosopher's order and the mystic's order? The difference between the philosopher's order and the mystic's order is the difference. The difference is this. Is Hishtalshalos, is this chain of steps in creation a gradualism, a step-by-step process, which actually brings us closer to Hashem? Or is this Hishtalshalos a gradualism, which doesn't mean it's any closer to Hashem, but it gives us a mechanism for our own personal growth? I'm going to say that again, because I said something very abstract. There are two ways to construe this ishtalshalos. One way to construe this ishtalshalos is that this ishtalshalos actually brings you closer to the Eibishter. You actually become more intimate with God. The alternative is there's no such thing as getting close to God. But there's such a thing as growth spiritually as a person. You grow. Now, when you grow, in your experience, you're getting closer to the Eibishter. Although, in fact, there's no such thing as closeness and distance from Hashem. I'll put it to you in simple words, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. In Siddur, we make reference to two phenomena, two possibilities. Im kevanim im ka'avadim, it can be God's children, it can be God's slaves. What's the difference between a child and a slave? A child is one with his father. There's a real intimacy. There's a real common bond, a real a neshama connectedness between child and parent. To say it in alternate words, children are going to become parents. Children are going to become parents. In other words, the child is the beginning of the parent, or the end of the parent. But there's a gradualism between child and parent. Slaves don't become masters. There's a fundamental disconnect. In the relationship between God and us, His creation, in the relationship between the Eibishter and His creation, there's two ways to construe that attachedness. One is with His children. His children means we can have a penis, we can have an intimacy, we can get close to Hashem, which is weird. How do you get close to Hashem? Alternatively, if we call ourselves His slaves, the best slave is only a slave. The best slave doesn't begin to approach a relationship with his master. He's a servant. And this really is the philosophical distinction between the gradualism, the hishtalshalos, that you would construe if you looked at the order of creation philosophically, and if you looked at the order of creation mystically. In mysticism, there's a concept of a child. In philosophy, there's no such thing. In philosophy, we're only slaves, even though the Torah calls us children. In Kabbala, we say there's two types of people. The greatest Jews, the Rabbenu Bechaye, the Moshe Rabbeinu's of the world, are called Hashem's children. The rest of us are called Hashem's slaves. But that's only possible within the parameters of mysticism. Within the parameters of philosophy, that doesn't exist at all. And the answer is the same premise, the same pinnacle, the same point that I constantly teach you, and I hope we're learning it. I mean, I'm not here to repeat myself, I'm trying to get something across. And that is that in Kabbalah there's a concept called a lakus, godliness. Godliness is not God. Or godliness is not a creation. It's the revelation of God. It's the light of God. It's the ray of God. It's the reflection of God. It has zero ego. Zero self-identity. It simply reveals Him. Not it tells you about Him. It's His expression. You know, if I tell you a story about God, the story isn't God. It's a vehicle. The light of Hashem, Pashat, reveals Hashem. In philosophy, there's no such thing. There's God, there's creation. The greatest creation is only a creation. There's no such thing as being so close to God that you're a little bit like Him. Nothing. There's no intimacy between God and Creator. God, Creator and creation from the philosophical perspective. From the philosophical perspective, He's true and we're false. But there's no such thing as being a little bit true. You can serve the truth. That's it. So from the perspective of the philosophers, that means not the mystics, the only kind of bond that can be between man and God is one of a servant and a slave. There's a hishtalshalos, there's an evolution, there's a gradualism, there's levels, higher levels and lower levels. The highest level is not closer to God. The lowest level is not further from God. The concept of the levels is a suggestion. You could grow. You could rise. But rise doesn't mean closer to God. Rise means being a bigger you. And as philosophers would say it, what is the ultimate you? What's the highest you possible? A prophet. I've shared this with you on many occasions in the past. Rambam wrote Shmeina Prakim, Introduction to Pirkei Avos. The entire intent of this essay, Shmeina Prakim, is to speak about the possibilities of man. How man can refine himself in every aspect. You have to be wholesome. You refine only certain parts of yourself, the other parts of yourself are dead weight. They weigh you down. The highest level a person can reach is like being like Moshe Rabbeinu. And he says it as a real possibility. It's all about ascension, going up. But going up doesn't mean coming closer to Hashem. It's not like you're going to become... You can't get close to Hashem. Hashem is an absolute truth. You're a slave. Slaves don't become masters. Slaves don't metamorphose into children. There isn't that link of real intimacy between God and creation that Kabbala provides. Because in philosophy there's no Elokus.
This is Rambam.
This is Rambam, this is Ralbag, this is Ezra, and so forth. Kabbala, mysticism, has a much more complicated evolution. Kabbala doesn't discount the evolution, the gradualism described in philosophy. It just adds to it. In addition to the idea that there is a whole bunch of steps in how a person can choose. I can be an animal, I can be base, I can be banal or banal, or I can aspire for higher, I can aspire for life. What did we have in the previous page? The three parts to you, your body, your soul of life, and your intellectual soul. Pick! The Eibush that sets up his creation is that these options actually manifest in what we perceive as an evolution. First God creates intellect, then He creates life, then He creates material. Your function is to aspire for higher as opposed to lower. Kabbala says that above that evolution is a second set of evolution, a second evolution. It's an evolution in the realms of Elokus, godliness. Godliness is not just where you going higher. It's you actually getting closer to Hashem. But because you could feel Him. Kabbala allows you to feel godliness. You could feel Ein Sof. When a person experiences Ein Sof, they're Poshet, the Eibish's child. Hashem and they are kin. The Zohar, everyone is learning Samach Vav. This is the year Samach Vav. One of the Zohars, which repeats itself many times in Samach Vav, because the Samach Vav is based on Ben and Eved. The whole Samach Vav is the dichotomy of Ben and Eved. Son versus slave, different types of souls. And who's better, the advantages of each. It goes on for 500 pages. When he speaks about Ben, he brings a Zohar. When the Zohar says the truth that us parents like to deny. You have a kid in your house. He's been in your bedroom. He's looked through every drawer. He knows every secret. Like a son who searches in all the secret places. There's no secrets. And mystically this means to say, a neshama of Atzilus doesn't only know the Ein Sof of Atzilus. He's Neven Davar Mitech Davar. From a Malach Kalaman and Osev of Kalaman. From Atzilus he knows the Ein Sof which is much higher than Atzilus. Kabbala provides, it reveals and teaches a way that a Yid could come close to Hashem. Not just be a better slave, but actually feel Ein Sof. When you feel Ein Sof, you become godly, not just subservient to God. It's a whole different issue. So now we're going to have two interpretations of the Ark. The constant in these two interpretations that they're going to describe the Ark as the steps. There's lower steps and there's higher steps. The distinction will simply be, are these steps in the realm of creation, Bria, and therefore the ascension on this ladder, on these steps, is not getting closer to God, but becoming a better person, becoming a better slave? Or are the steps which are going to be represented by the Ark mystical? Godly opportunity, not just for you to be a better person, but to actually approach the Eibishter. And that's the difference between the philosophical and the mystical interpretations of the Ark. In other words, they're really saying the same thing, with their own limitations. Philosophy has the limitation that's based on the intellectual barrier that says there's nothing in between God and creation. And therefore there's no link between creation and God. Kabbala, which is Tayrus Hashem, it's prophetic, it comes from the Eibishter himself, introduces us to the notion of the Ein Sof, of light, which allows for a Yid to be the Eibishter's Akint, to be Hashem's child. There should be, and the Ark is descriptive of this. The physical universe is described as having steps. 10 steps, 10 heavens, 7 heavens, 8 heavens, 9 heavens, 10 heavens. There's the complex lowly world. There's the simple world of the element. And there's the abstract world of the angels. The physical universe is broken up into 3. The lowest realm is the realm of people. The second realm is the realm of the demons, the Shadim, that each have one element, either fire or wind or water or earth. And the highest realm is the realm of the angels. The Ark is representative of this order. Above it all, what's above the whole physical universe, is called Seichel HaPoel. Seichel HaPoel means the intellect that makes things happen. It's the lowest level of God's intellect, is the way the Eibishter connects to the world. Seichel HaPoel is an angel. It's a malach. It's the malach that makes the whole universe sustain its order. And the idea is, you're ascending. You want to get close to the Seichel HaPoel. Why? Because you can become a prophet. In mysticism and Kabbala, it's not just by you becoming a better person. You can get closer to the Eibishter. You can experience the Ein Sof. So this is the foundation of the next several interpretations. And I want you to know that Rebbe's going to throw us a curveball. After we finish all of this is classic. What I'm telling you now, everybody says. The Rebbe comes along and adds a new... It's good and not here you see clearly the Chiddush of Chassidus.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
Why not just dispense with philosophy then, or using it as counterpoint to be able to show...
Well, first of all, we're using it as counterpoints. Second of all, they're not in conflict. Everything the philosophy says we agree with in the level called Bria. They simply have no concept of an Atzilus. But you don't have to say this is wrong and this is right. Now, the next item on my list is Ralbag. And I want to say this. You should know, Ralbag is a terribly controversial commentary. There are communities that condemn Ralbag. Okay? Ralbag is a terribly controversial commentary. There are people who don't learn Ralbag. There are people who condemn Ralbag as having been so enlightened that he was beyond the pale of Torah and so forth. But I've told you many times before that Rebbe the Tzemach Tzedek quotes Ralbag in Chassidus. Which means that not only do we believe Ralbag is Torah, we believe Ralbag is Holy Ark, divine inspiration. What's wrong with Ralbag? He's heavily philosophical. Now, Rambam is also philosophical. But the Rambam is not heavy. Ralbag is heavy. How do I explain what I just said? The Rambam's philosophy is not very, very philosophical. He's conforming to philosophy's rules, but there's an enormous fineness in his message. Ralbag is so philosophical, there's so much intellect in the Ralbag's form, it's hard to find God. But our Rabbeim held that Ralbag is Torah. In other words, Ralbag, as immersed, as much as he honored philosophy, is speaking the truth. And the Ralbag has a fascinating commentary on the Holy Ark. And it's consistent with what I just described to you. The Holy Ark is viewed as a chariot. The chariot for God. A chariot has parts, lower parts and higher parts. There's the legs of the chariot, there's the seat of the chariot, there's the arm of the chariot, and then there's the one sitting in the chariot. The one sitting in the chariot is Hashem. But in philosophy, there's no real relationship between Hashem and the chariot. Because there's no gradualism, there's no such thing as godliness. The chariot is all a mechanism for bringing us closer to Him, but not Him to us. Well, I should say, it's bringing us closer to the maximum capacity of man, but it's not bringing us to a closer intimacy with the Eibishter. So Ralbag, he gives an introduction on page Shintan Al-Beis, I'm not going to read, where essentially he explains the credibility of philosophy. How philosophy can reveal the truth. And he says, when people learn philosophy, and it brings them to the opposite of the truth, it's because they're dumb. Their minds are not fine. So instead of philosophy bringing them to the truth, which is Hashem, and the highest level of that truth is prophecy, in Yiddish, it verpluntes them, it weighs them down, it distracts them. But if you know philosophy and you have a real acute mind, philosophy inevitably, writes Ralbag, will bring you to the truth of Hashem.
I'm a little bit lost. The ultimate outcome would be to become a prophet,
Yeah.
to a philosopher?
Sure.
Isn't that closer to God?
No. Because philosophers hold that being a prophet means God communicating to you through an angel. Angels are creations. In mysticism, being a prophet means seeing Ein Sof. The interpretation of prophecy is different in a way that's consistent with the basic distinction between the two schools of thought. So let's read a little Ralbag. V'hine, heichel b'tzura yesen nechbedes. The Torah begins its description of the creation of the Aron by selecting what is the choicest of the creations to which we are familiar. Hanensois hashfelis, on the lowly world. Who hanav shem beres, the human form. The Eibishter places 2 cherubs on the ark with the likenesses of a boy and a girl. The message is the best of man, the best of the physical universe, physical world is man and woman, and man and woman can approach Hashem. Okay? Asher bei luches abyss in which the tablets of the covenant sit. V'nyakruv ha'echad hu meir al ha'seichel hahi yu liyani. One cherub, the lesser cherub, is representative of theoretical reasoning in the human, within the parameters of creation. In the creation of the universe, there's a lot of possibility to aspire towards intellectual truth. V'akruv ha'ached, and the second cherub, who meir l'aseichel ha'poel, represents that angel that is above the universe and affects it. In other words, one cherub represents how high we can lift ourselves in approaching the spiritual end of the universe in terms of our mind looking for truth. The other cherub represents how there is a message from God that barely touches the universe and gives it a divine message. One cherub is the highest of what the physical universe could be, and the other cherub is the lowest of an angel that communicates the truth of Hashem to this universe. And we're aspiring that one cherub should touch the other. In other words, we should be as close to the Eibush as we can possibly get, and be touched by a malach that is descending to have a relationship with the creation.
That's a philosophical construct.
It's a classic philosophical construct. But it's describing the Aron as a model of the universe with the focus on growing. Don't be wood, be gold. Don't be the box, be the cherubs. Okay? And he discusses it in some detail. Go down just 2 lines. The whole design of the ark is to suggest to man, look, you're high, but there's higher. We're the female cherub. You should go to the male cherub. The awareness that we're the female cherub and there's a male cherub. Now remember, in the philosopher's world, the cherubs are not godliness. They're at best angels, at worst people. You know something above yourself, reach for it. That's the message. I'm provoking you. I'm stimulating you. I'm agitating you. Reach for it. Yishtadlu b'asagos, man will aspire to go from Seichel Ha'Elyani, the highest level of intellect within the parameters of the creation, to the lowest level of divine intellect. Ba'achazok with great effort. And Rasa, therefore, he desires, the wings of these cherubs should have their wings extended upwards, lahedes, to indicate al shetnuasam he, litzad ma'ila, we're aspiring, we're trying to reach, trying to go beyond ourselves. Ki'ilu yishtadlu, as though they're making an effort, lalis mizeh ha'matziyas, to ascend from this reality, el matziyas yesegaveh, to a higher reality. But understand, the highest reality is still a slave.
Right.
You're improving yourself, but you're not becoming more intimate with the Eibishter. You're not getting closer to the Eibishter. Ashena pshat, Ralbag. And this really is the gist of the philosophical approach to the whole question. Now, Vihine, I'm reading the next paragraph. Hayu ba'ar luchas habis, was in the ark, there were the tablets of the covenant. Lahoirais, the message here is, al shahagos hanavu einanimna. You can grow and grow and grow. What's the end? You can become a prophet. Aval, however, tiyeh haga'asa, you becoming a prophet, you touching the edge of a divine communication, is efsharas, is a possibility. Be'emtzos nekulim elu, as represented by the role of these 2 cherubs. You're going to have to go as far as you can go. The malach will descend as low as you can go, and you'll be touched by prophecy. Okay, and so forth and so on. And he goes on to explain why prophecy is so important. And he finishes the paragraph by saying this was a model of the divine chariot, which is what the Ramban said, the model of the divine chariot, the chariot of God. He starts off by saying it has the model of a man and a woman. And the idea is that human beings can aspire. He finishes up by saying it's a model of the divine chariot. Through the cherubs is a relationship between man and God from the man's perspective, from the ascension of man towards godliness, not from God to man. You understand? Now, I'm cutting and pasting, and if I had an hour, I'll read the whole Ralbag. It's a very reich Ralbag. It's a very deep Ralbag in my view. And it's very consistent with how I think Chassidus would like us to read Sifrei Chakira, Jewish philosophical works, but it'll have to do. Now we go to Rambam. Going back to the Rabbenu Bechaye, page 80. And as you'll see, Rambam says basically the same thing as the Ralbag. Page Reish Ayin Daled. Al derech hapshat. The simple interpretation of the ark and the cherubs is hakruvim. The cherubs, the mikdash mishkan, and the sanctuary and the tabernacle, moifes are an indicator of edus and a testimony limtzias malachim that angels exist. Who cares? Angels are representative of the divine chariot, and they're a provocation. Reach for me. So the Rambam is saying the same thing as Ralbag is saying, but the Ralbag, if you will, said it more in avoided terms. The Rambam is saying it more in Haskalah, philosophical terms. He doesn't say what you have to do, he's saying what's the design, what's the model. Okay. Just as we know that the most important thing for a human being to believe is that Hashem exists, from the principles of the Torah, as it's written, you can't find a place. 3 lines in. Similarly, we were commanded the first principle is to believe in God, the second principle is to believe in the angels. Why? Because they're the conduit. They're a step. They're an evolutionary step. But it's not Ein Sof. It's not Hishtalshus Malakus, it's Hishtalshus in the Shirayim.
You can only come close to something that touches that,
And at the end of it all, nobody touches nothing. It's not about you reaching God, you becoming better, that's all. There's no intimacy. Because Malachim are also creations. The Malachim are the communicators. The possibility for abstract and true intellect. Umasimim hadibur befi hadavim. They're the conduit, according to the philosophers, for prophecy. The mitzvahs Hashem Yisbarach in the commandments of God. Shilmale, if not for the presence of the angels, ein nevuah, there would be no prophecy. This is classic philosophy. Mystics can debate whether prophets are involved in prophecy, but it's not an imperative, because mystics believe in Ein Sof.
You have a direct relationship.
You're seeing the light. God can't be seen. But since the philosophers have no such concept, it's imperative to them, as we discussed last week in the class about angels, that prophecy is through the angels. Prophecy is through the angels. So the angels become a step. Not a step to get closer to God, a step to become better, higher. And the Rambam says, just like you have to believe in God, you got to believe in the prophets, because in the angels. Because believing in the angels is believing in yourself, in your direction, your possibility. That's why we're commanded to make cherubs, to indicate the concept of angels. Now, I can go on and on. You got the message. The Rambam is saying the same thing as Ralbag, but Ralbag starts from you and goes to the angels. Rambam starts with the angels and comes to you. Say that Hashem made an order. He doesn't have to. He chose to. That order provides a possibility for us to understand the evolution of creation, and it provides a ladder by which we can climb rung by rung by rung. In mysticism, you're actually getting closer to the Eibishter. In philosophy, you're just becoming better and better and better. The Holy Ark represents this ladder. And the culmination of this ladder is becoming a prophet. The 2 kruvim, like Ralbag explained, and Rambam repeats, are you becoming as great a person as you could become, being touched by the Malach, which is communicating you the words of Hashem. I think this is gorgeous. I think it's mamish legendary. This is a second category of interpretation. This is, for us, interpretation 7. If you can imagine, we've done 7 interpretations. The first few were musar, like ethical, simple pshat. The last couple have been philosophical, explaining how the art is representative of a ladder of human ascent, but not reaching God, just human ascent. Now, we're ready for Kabbala. And Kabbala is Rabbenu Bechaye, page Ezra. Rabbenu Bechaye, page Reish Ayin Zayit. And I'm not going to waste a lot of time. I'm just going to tell you briefly. Okay? Because it's not, there's no great revelation. He's going to repeat the exact same thing, just use different words, and mean a different level. Now this is Kabbala of Rishonim. The language is not familiar to you. Shnei Kruvim b'Mishkan HaMikdash, the 2 cherubs in this tabernacle and sanctuary. I want to make an observation. When he quoted Rambam, he said, "B'mikdash u'mishkan," and in Kabbala he says, "Mishkan u'mikdash." You tell me the difference. Homework. Kineged hakoil v'ha'esh, are representative of the voice and the fire of Har Sinai. For reasons that I'm not getting into right now, but that Rabbenu Bechaye talks about at length in Parshas Jethro. He's not here, so we'll say Yisrei. Koil is Zoh, the Erampin, and the fire is Malchus. Koil is the masculine aspect of Ein Sof, and fire is the feminine aspect of Ein Sof. But we're not dealing anymore with angels and creations. We're dealing with godliness. The mystical Aron begins where the philosophical Aron ends. And they are mutually exclusive. But we're not saying they're wrong. They're true on one level. Kabbala speaks about the viable possibility of intimacy between man and God. Because there's Ein Sof. And you can climb, not just to becoming a better and better person, becoming a prophet, which means connecting to Hashem through the angels, but you can have intimacy with Him by being touched by His light. And the two kruvim are not representative of you and God, but the two godly lights. The godly light that brings the truth to us, and the godly light the godly light which represents the truth, and the godly light which comes closer to us to bring that truth to us. The two cherubs are a lower level of Ein Sof and a higher level of Ein Sof. The level of Ein Sof which is representative of the Eibishter, and the level of Ein Sof to which we have a connection. Okay? And that's it. Enough said. You have time? Go right ahead. Good luck. Levi for the Vilst.
Okay, the Malchus is what distributes it to connection it's connected to God, but one comes down and the other one is the dispersion of it. Yes?
Malchus is the dissemination of it.
Right, dissemination.
And Erampin, the masculine, the male, cherub represents the Ein Sof being given to us by God, and Malchus is distributing it, making it Shekhinah, giving it to us. Not bad. Now, these several interpretations that we just had, the two philosophical ones and the mystical one, in a word, they're that the Holy Ark represented the Merkava, the divine chariot, which Ezra said and Ramban said, but they said it in such abstract forms, we couldn't decide what they hold. Ezra can be consistent with philosophy, can be consistent with mysticism, and it can be consistent with both, and that's exactly the way he wants it. But there's an underlying constant here. Inside the Ark there's the Torah. The battery of this process is Torah. The Holy Ark is a gestalt, a model of the Gestaltschluss, which brings Hashem closer to us closer to Hashem. It all surrounds the Torah. You understand? As the Ramban underscores, the whole Ark is one entity. It's an entity that represents and communicates the Torah. The box holds the Torah. The cherubs are the vehicles in which the Torah can give you the power to rise, to grow. Now we come to the Kuta Sicha Shel Sidareinu. Okay? The Rebbe has a sicha in which he discusses the differences of opinion about the Holy Ark between the Ramban and the Rashi. Pshuta Shel Mikra. It's a whole involved sicha. The essence of it is, the Rebbe holds, he proves it of course, that the Ramban considers the entire Ark one entity, one point. The box and the deck and the cherub is all one. It's a Merkava, it's a chariot for the Eibishter, which is generated, which is batteried by Torah. Rashi disagrees. Rashi holds there's two ideas. One is the box, the Ark. The purpose of the box is to hold the Torah. On top of the Ark, there's a deck. On top of the deck, there's two cherubs. The cherubs are not the culmination of the Torah. They're not. They're a separate entity. And they're representative of the Jewish people. Not Jewish people who are using Torah to ascend to God. No, just the Jewish people. As a separate idea. And the Rebbe on this basis adds classic Chassidus. What's the Chiddush of a Kabbala? You're about to hear it loud and clear. Now, every point in Torah, Chassidus has this manipulation, this kvetch. But you don't always see it. Let me put it to you in abstract terms. Kabbala talks about Ein Sof. Chassidus talks about Atzmos. Kabbala talks about the light of God. Chassidus talks about God Himself. And God Himself is the Jew, not the Torah.
Not the what? Not the Torah.
Not the Torah. Torah Zoyer. A Yid is Ezra. In other words, a Jew is a child of Hashem. How does Kabbala construe a Jew being a child of Hashem? Because you can use your mind and your heart and your senses to grow till you can reach the Ein Sof. Chassidus says a Jew is a child of Hashem. Why? He's a piece of Him. Says the Rebbe, this is the difference between the Ramban's Aron and Rashi's Aron. Ramban says the whole Aron is one Nekuda Torah, the light of Hashem, which a Yid climbs step by step to reach the Ein Sof. Comes again Rashi, like, name. That's one dimension. There's a higher dimension. A Yid has to grow. He's a piece of Eibishter. Not Eibishter in this, Eibishter Aleir. This doesn't exist in Kabbala. Now let me show it to you inside. Let me show it to you inside. Last page. Der Bir Bazer in Pnimiyas Al-Yonim. And this is so exciting to see clearly the difference between one theology and the next. Philosophy speaks about you having a relationship with the Eibishter as a slave. Kabbala speaks about a relationship with the Eibishter as a child. And Chassidus is saying you don't need a relationship with Eibishter. You're him. Shtik Eibishter. Der Inyan Ha'aron. The notion of the Holy Ark. Was beteiligt seine gewende Eides, which was the covenant, be it the Torah, the Luchas, or both. Weißt das Torah? Is the Torah. Und wir steht tegen Ramban, as Ramban writes, as Kol Yisrael, all the Jewish people, they all participated in making the Aron, Kadesh Yisrael called the Torah. It's about Torah. Kommt das like the Ramban holds, as the Kapelus and Kruvim, the deck and the cherubs, which he holds, and he says it very clearly, we read that Ramban inside. The whole thing is one package. It's a gestalt, it's representative of the Eibishter resting on the Torah. Is the Adati Lecha, Hashem is going to appear to us. The Dibat Yitchan speak to Moshe Rabbeinu. Now I'll compare about the deck. Verbunden mit in der Torah. Luchis. Mashenken like Rashi, as opposed to Rashi. There's two ideas here. Torah and Yisrael. The Shlomo says the Rebbe, as the Tam Achilik B'neiim is, the basis of this distinction is Ramban is a Makubal. Rashi is Pshat. God is in Pshat. Kabbalah is godliness. Pshat is God. Look at the Rebbe's word. It's so reich. It's mamish. If you want to know what Chassidus, that's the Kabbalah. You couldn't find a better example. In Pirush Ramban's commentary is saying, Dvarim Ne'imim L'Yedechem. Sweet things, but you have to be a Kabbalist to get them. As Mavayr and Yonah for Seder Satera Bagoli, he revealed the secrets of the Torah, which is still what can be revealed. Even Kabbalah, Rebbe argues, can be revealed. The light of Hashem, Ein Sof, is revealable. You can touch it. You can be Hashem's son, meaning to say, you can develop a kinship with Him. Okay? The last two lines of that paragraph, the Kesher Tzavishn Yidin mit Nebishn is durch Torah. The bond between the Jewish people and Hashem through the Torah. Mashenkin, the Pirush Rashi is supposed to Rashi. Pshute, Shal Mikra, simple pshat. It says the Heilige Rebbe had sich on the pshitas fun a Yidin, the plainness of a Jew. Well, the pshitas fun a Yidin is ein Zach, but pshitas not. The plainness of the Jew is more the plainness of the Eibishter himself. Is one with the plainness of Hashem himself. When the Iskashis, when Yidin mit Eibishter, this attachment to the Jew and Hashem, that is plain, is hecher, is above. Noch also be the Iskasha the Ateirik Vayach. This is not a connection of us to Him through the light. This is a connection of us to Him because we're one. Skip the next paragraph. On the far land Rashi, this is why Rashi holds. And the Kapelus Ekruvim, that the Kapelus Ekruvim are not they're separate from the Aron. While the Kapelus Diktuis, because the Kapelus expresses. The Aron is Torah. Ramban holds it's one big package. What does Rashi hold? The Aron is Torah, and the deck and the cherubs is the Iskashus Atzmis, which it's the essential bond of the Jewish people and Hashem, Shalom Alam HaTorah, which is above the Torah, Yidna higher than the Torah.